with each speaker design, you have different bass roll-off. So a ported speaker, you could extend the low end by tuning the port to get quite a bit lower, but then after that frequency, it drops off like a rock.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas with a sealed speaker, like an NS10, even though it maybe drops off around 90, it's a very slow, gradual roll-off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you have to realize that too, like something like Barefoots, they have so much sub-frequency and they roll because they're sealed and they also go down low. If your room isn't very good, they're putting out so much sub information that the room can't even handle.
Right.
And it'll probably trick you into thinking, or
exactly.
It's going to be messed up.
It's going to really skew your low end.
And that's why NS10s were so popular in history too, like when engineers had to travel around studios, because they don't put out a ton of low end, but it's a very smooth roll-off. So you can kind of sense some of that sub-information, but it's not really lighting up the room.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, from traveling, like just being a freelance engineer for so long, I traveled to multiple studios, and NS10s always sounded like NS10s.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't matter what the room sounded like to me. I'd go into a room and I'm like, yeah, it sounds
like NS10s.
So I'm good. Like, where I listen to those speakers, I know exactly what the actual, like, the live room sounds like.
Yeah.
Instead of the control room. The control room could be whatever, and they usually were.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have some great, some garbage,
Yeah.
you know, and where you put on their other sets of monitors, and it's just a crapshoot of what you're going to get. But NS10s for me have always been easy.
I think people also don't realize how much the axis of what you're listening to affects the frequency balance. If your ears are here and the speaker and the tweeter is sitting down here, you're not hearing things the way the speaker is actually portraying. And if they're way up here, tweeter shooting over your head, same thing. Either one, you're probably going to think it's darker than it actually is, and you're going to keep boosting the treble because you can't actually hear it. Because most speakers, a two-way speaker, the acoustical axis is almost always between the tweeter and the woofer.
Yeah.
On an ATC or a three-way speaker, it's always almost at the mid-range driver or a little bit lower.
And that's where they should be set.
And that's where your ears should be set. So like on an ATC, the tweeter should actually be above your head. Your ear should be right at the mid-range.
Okay.
And then, or oratones, they should, they can kind of be wherever.
Yeah.
They sound like, but if your NS10s are too low or too high or whatever, like, they're also going to sound completely different.
Right.
The other thing is how close you have them together. Like, the closer you bring them together, the more low end or low mid buildup you're going to get, and also the more the image, the more the center of the image is going to pop out, and the sides will seem smaller. Whereas if you spread the speakers out too far, the mid is going to start to dip, or the center image, and you'll think you'll be boosting stuff in the middle way too loud. So having your speakers in the proper setup, usually it's an equilateral triangle, that will give you the most accurate representation of what you're supposed to be hearing. I mean, I love ATCs too, but I do find sometimes having only a three-way speaker is not necessarily how the outside world hears things.
Gotcha.
Sometimes all the extra detail and information can trick you into thinking your mix is better than it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, ATCs are great because they're so brutal that
they're usually super honest.
Yeah, they're super honest.
Yeah.
But I also find what I like about NS10s is you can listen at quite a low volume, and you still hear all the transient information, the detail, because the mid-range is so right there. Whereas with ATCs, I find I have to have them turned up a little bit more to feel like I
Same with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never seem to be finding it.
Speakers are always a compromise too, right? I don't think there's any perfect speaker. When you read that, it's a flat frequency response, that's all BS. No speaker is perfect. No. They all have a different representation of sound. Mm-hmm. And some of them are more accurate than others, but there's never going to be a perfect one. So sometimes that's why you have different monitors as well, to give you different representations of what you're hearing.
Right.
Just to give you a different window into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, the other thing about monitoring is talking about, we haven't talked about how loud you listen, how loud or quiet, which drastically affects what you hear.
Yeah, and you seem to go in stages of, like, me tracking, I'm all over the place. Like, once I always start getting sounds really quiet, but then once I really get into it, I crank it.
Yeah.
And I listen definitely loud.
Right.
Like, while tracking, especially if it's rock or, pop stuff, it's just got to be kicking my ass.
Well, there's a certain emotion to music that you don't get when you're listening quiet. You don't actually feel it unless it's turned up to a certain level where your body is feeling those vibrations.
Yeah. But of course, super loud how often or how long can you listen now?
Yeah, your ears will get fatigued
Yeah.
too. So there's got to be a balance. And like the other thing is, you won't hear certain resonances or dynamics necessarily at low volumes.
Okay.
Like on a lead vocal, for instance, I find for me, I have to be listening loud to get the vocal to be compressed properly.
Mm-hmm.
Because at a quiet volume, I might think it's fine. As soon as you turn it up, certain frequencies or words are biting your ear with like,
Yeah.
you know, with S's or whatever, just certain upper mid-range resonances. And so I have to listen loud to get it smoothed out properly.
Yeah.
And same thing with low end. I mean, and that's just based on how humans hear frequencies. Like it's called the Fletcher-Munson curves. And at lower volumes, your ear won't hear bass.
Yeah, kind of at lower volumes, it's all
It's because
and then the opposite
happens.
loud.
Yeah. And it basically comes down to again, like in human nature, you had to be attuned to like speech frequencies to be able to hear people and communicate, and so our ears are tuned to this kind of small window of where human speech is. Can we talk about power amps for monitors?
Okay, fine.
Okay. Part of why I think everyone loves NS10s or even ProAX or some of these passive speakers is because people will put a lot of money into the amplification that powers those speakers. Whereas if you're buying, let's say, a $500 pair of monitors off the shelf, that $500 is getting spread between woofers, tweeters, the box, the electronics in it, and the amp. So you're basically getting probably the worst possible amplification you
Worst
can get.
part of every detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas with something like an NS10, you might have an NS10, which wasn't that expensive as a speaker, but you're putting a $5,000 amp on it, and that amp allows you to have infinite, transient headroom and like clean reproduction no matter what the level. Whereas with cheap monitors, you'll turn them up and they'll start to compress, and the amps will actually be sending out distorted sine waves because they can't produce, signals that loud. So before it even hits the woofer, it's distorted. That's why really high-end monitors, a lot of the money is actually also put in the amplification.
Yeah.
And where you see in hi-fi systems, people spend like $10,000 on an amp.
Would you rather passive speaker?
If it's if I have a good amp.
Yeah.
And I also find sometimes there's something with a passive speaker, they put all the money into the components of the speaker and the woofer and the box and making it all good. Where if it's powered, sometimes again they're spreading out the budget between two things. And so sure you're paying even $1,000 for a pair of monitors, but $500 of that's probably going to the amps.
Yeah.
So you're really only using $500 speakers. So like the Amphions, for instance, in Canadian dollars, I think are about $8,000, but that's without amps. So once you got good amps, those speakers comparatively would be like $13,000.
These powered speakers with the amp all built in it, is that contributing to the sound as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, technically you don't want the amp near a vibrating box because the more vibrations the amp has, they can introduce, I think it's microphonic distortions or something like that. But from what I've read, like it's better to have it separated. And that's why with huge studio mains, you'll see the amps separated from the speakers because those mains are producing so much low end and rattling so much that
it'd be insane.
Yeah, you don't really want them attached. It's probably less of an issue than the room is always going to be the worst issue, and then having the monitors actually properly set up is the next thing.
Okay.
So
buy decent monitors, set them up properly. If they're passive, get good amps.
Yeah.